My entire
Wow.
body came back online. My mental, like my body mind connection, my connection to my femininity, all of it was so like whoosh. I also had a pretty bad case of post-birth control syndrome and like the acne and all the things.
Yeah.
And really was what part of what sparked the like, wow, the female body is so amazing and can totally heal. Like I had been suppressing my hormones. That's what hormonal birth control does. It like turns them off. It suppresses your hormones for 10 years. And my body can come back online and like do this and how amazing that is in that process. So that was kind of my journey in getting there.
Welcome to the Mindful Method podcast, where we don't just fill your ears, we fill your mind with the tools to enhance your emotional and physical reality. I'm your host, Jordana Sade, here to guide you on this journey of the body-brain connection and help you take your power back to create the life you've always wanted. So grab a seat, because class is in session and our method is on the syllabus. Here at the Mindful Clinic, we're not just changing your mind, we're changing your life. One mindful moment at a time. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Mindful Method podcast. Today I am joined by a very special new friend, Stefanie Adler, and I was actually just interviewed on her podcast last week and we just had so many things in common. It was such a great conversation, so I'm so excited to bring you guys to bring Stefanie to the Mindful Method for you guys. But Stephanie, I really just love to start off by understanding, who you are, how you got here. Like you've got a great story. So if you want to just share with my audience what brought you to where you are.
Thanks, Jordana. Yeah. And I remember this was one of the things we kind of bonded over when we were talking on my podcast, is that my story also starts when I was a kid. And so when I was 12 years old, I had been dealing with so many digestive issues for so long. I mean, my parents say that from the time I was brought home from the hospital, I was just like my stomach hurt all the time. And I like look back at pictures of myself as a kid. And of course, there are like so many beautiful, happy memories and pictures. But then there's also like all these like family pictures where like I'm like sitting on the side, like, like kind of like just like with a pout on my face. And it's because I didn't feel good. I had a stomach ache like all the time. Everything I ate made my stomach hurt.
Mhm.
And so my parents started taking me to doctors right around the time I was like 10 or 11, maybe to like start to see what was going on. And they ran a colonoscopy, they did an endoscopy, they gave me all these medications, all these things. And these doctors were basically like, you have IBS and you're going to have to live with it forever. I also learned as an adult that the doctor said to my mom that she also thought I was making it up and that she had real kids, like real sick kids to treat and like to get out of her office because like I just refused to accept that this was going to be the rest of my life. I mean, I'm like 12 years
Mhm.
old and you're telling me that I'm going to just have to deal with having stomach aches every day for the rest of my life. So at 12, I decided to change my diet despite my doctor saying that it would have nothing to do with, how I was feeling or if it would help. And by making some really small diet changes, mostly cutting out gluten and not even doing it in like a really holistic way. Like this was like, 20 years ago, there was a tiny aisle in Whole Foods that had like cardboard boxes basically for crackers. And, I made that one switch in symptoms I'd been having for almost 13 years when it started to go away in 3 months. And I was
Wow.
like totally amazed at how food can be the catalyst for dis-ease in the body or for medicine, right? And can really heal us. And so that kind of started my journey. Fast forward several years later, I'm going off to college, and my mom is like, you should be a nutritionist. And I'm like, shut up, mom, you know nothing about me. And so I go and I get a degree in conflict resolution. And of course, mom is always right. And so I come back after college, where I went abroad, and I came back to the United States, and every other commercial is for a junk food and for a medication. Junk food medication, junk food medication. And no one is putting two and two together. So I decided to go back to school for nutrition. Thanks, mom. And through that process, really just like fell in love with the female body and how amazing it is and our capacity for healing and my getting off of birth control and just like really sparked this fascination and infatuation with everything from preconception all the way through baby's first foods and just like really understanding women's cycles and the magic we create. So that was the long of the short of how I got here. And now what I really love to do is help women become their own healer, help them become their own experts of their bodies by really helping them step outside of what conventional medicine is telling us is either normal in our body that might be common, or running tests that doctors won't test and helping women uncover blocks to wellness in their own body so that we can help the body heal itself by removing those blocks.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. And there's so many things that you said that I was like, oh, I could touch on any one of these, but it's just in a timely, just to go first from a timely perspective. Literally, right before I hopped on this call, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, and he was saying that when he goes back to Croatia, he can eat whatever, like he doesn't have any issues with his stomach. But here, it's like we're popping antacids all the time, and I'm like, oh, let's try something else. But then we kind of got into this bigger discussion about how in Europe, okay, I'm Italian, so like the food there is very gluttonous. It's like cheese and bread and sauces, and yet it digests so differently than the food here. But then we also look at how different the medical industries are. Like I have a friend whose parents are doctors in Europe, and like they don't make half as much money as the doctors make here. And so keeping people sick is actually not profitable in Europe. And so I just wanted to highlight that because you were like, there's an advertisement for the junk food and then an advertisement for the prescription, and it just kind of feeds this like really ugly cycle that unfortunately we buy into here in North America. So I really I commend you and other practitioners that are really kind of going against that grain and helping people understand food is either medicine or the cause of disease. So thank you so much.
And
One thing that yeah, go ahead.
add one thing to that because I only
Yeah.
found out after becoming a mom and it shocked me. There's so, and it's like not, and it's not just in the pediatrician industry, but this is where I notice it the most.
Hmm.
A lot of doctors get a bonus that is as big as their salary from in the cardiology world. It's from the statin prescriptions. So if they write a certain amount of prescriptions and every doctor in the practice has to write a certain amount of prescriptions, then they get the bonus. But if one person in the office doesn't write enough prescriptions, the entire practice won't get their bonus. So there's like incredible peer pressure to like write, and it's
Whoa.
easy. I noticed this with my father-in-law. I was talking to him and he was like, yeah, my doctor put me on a cholesterol medication, but I didn't have high cholesterol. Let me go and look. And his cholesterol is at 70, which is like not healthy low. I mean, like that's a whole separate conversation that we don't have to get
Yeah.
into, but it's the same way
Yeah.
with pediatricians. The entire practice gets a bonus that is up to 100% of what they make all year. So it literally doubles their money if a certain amount of their constituents, a certain amount of their patients are inoculated. And so if you don't want to do it, a lot of pediatricians' offices won't let you come because it'll throw off their
Mhm.
numbers. Like, anyways, just saying it's
Yeah.
crazy the way that pharma is interweaving, like how it is impacting every aspect of American health and how wild it is that we have to like actively choose to step out of it if that's your choice.
Totally. My son, I did a lot of research on vaccines and stuff when I was I was actually raising a baby as I was studying nutrition.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, tetanus, yes, let's get the tetanus shot. But like varicella, like just I'd rather him have chickenpox. Like I had chickenpox 3 times, I'm fine. And so, I went to my doctor with like, these are the ones that I want. These are the ones that I don't want. She's like, oh, no, no, it doesn't work like that. And then like they would call and call and call. And I had no idea that it was that type of peer pressure from the entire office that makes
Crazy.
things like, and the worst part about this is, I would hope so, but I think that anybody who wants to work in the health field like has a really good intention starting out, and I want to help people heal, like regardless on what side you're on, if you're on Western medicine or holistic medicine. I think that that's the intention going into it, but because of the way that the industry is developed and built, it makes it very difficult to have that in mind when your like livelihood really depends
Totally.
on these pharmaceutical companies.
I think doctors have such a hard time because they are in so much debt most of them, by the time they leave medical
Mhm.
school and they've devoted
Yeah.
years of their life before they're even a practicing doctor for the most part,
Hmm.
you know? And then they get in and it's like, whoa, okay, this is not actually what I thought it was. I wanted to be in this to heal people. And now I have 15 minutes to talk to people in insurance that I have to deal with in the practice. And there's so much peer pressure. I mean, I really feel for doctors. I think it's a very
Yeah.
hard profession nowadays. And I will say, like, I mean, the pediatrician's office that we go to, for example, has like chosen to opt out of that world. And
Wow.
like, good for you. And also, I know other pediatricians' offices where they're just like very upfront about like, we charge more because we don't do this. And therefore, like, this is
Yeah.
the way we can do it. And so I think there's always a way, but it is, I mean, so hard for them. Yeah.
Okay, so you talked about, and I love the way you put it, your infatuation with the female body and its capacity to heal. And so I'd love to talk, like, go dive a little bit deeper into that. And first of all, I'm in this past like year and a half, I would say 2 years, I've been getting really into like feminine energy and the idea that we have the ability to create versus like men and what that means for us and our capacity to be able to manifest things even just from the fact that we can create life inside of our body. So can you just tell me a little bit more about what you meant by your infatuation with the female body and how females have the capacity to heal?
Yeah. I mean, it's just like such a trip if you think about the fact. It's almost like I mean, obviously it's the most natural thing in the world and all animals do it, but like we grow a human inside our womb and then we nourish it that entire time and the body will do amazing crazy things to prioritize the life of this baby. Like
Hmm.
wild things. And then we birth this baby and then we nourish this baby from our body for depending on how, if you choose to do that, it can be like up to 4 or 6 years. And like, then we do it all over again. And it is just so trippy and amazing and beautiful and wild to think about how this happens. And what I talk about that from that perspective is, as I mentioned, I had become really like interested in health from kind of that young age and like really understanding food as medicine. But there was like this little thing that I wasn't paying attention to. I had
Mm.
2 painful periods,
Mm.
and my aunt, this is just like a little bit of help and reference, who I shared a lot of like body things with. She also was like the aunt with all the stomach issues, things like that. And we kind of had like a similar build and all these things. Really struggled to get pregnant with her 2 children. She ended up using in vitro at the time when it was like IVF, when it was like not as common. And she had endometriosis. And so I had these 2 painful
Mm.
periods when I get my period, and I'm 12 years old. And my mom takes me to the gynecologist, and she says, well, the only way we would diagnose you with endometriosis is to a laparoscopy. But what we can do is just put you on hormonal birth control, put you on the pill. So I'd been taking this pill for like 9 years.
Wow.
And still, even though I was doing all these things and my health was so much better, I still had a lot of anxiety. I still felt like emotionally super unstable and just like disconnected from myself. And when I went back to school for nutrition, I was like, what? I haven't even been thinking about, like, I've been paying so much attention to all of the food I'm putting in my body, but I'm not thinking about the fact that I put this little pink pill in my body every day and what this might be doing. So I decided to get off of hormonal birth control and like, holy, can I curse?
Yes.
Holy
Please.
shit. It was like an awakening. My entire
Wow.
body came back online. My mental, like my body mind connection, my connection to my femininity, all of it was so like whoosh. I also had a pretty bad case of post-birth control syndrome and like the acne and all the things. And
Yeah.
really was what part of what sparked the like, wow, the female body is so amazing and can totally heal. Like I had been suppressing my hormones. That's what hormonal birth control does. It like turns them off. It suppresses your hormones for 10 years. And my body can come back online and like do this and how amazing that is in that process. So that was kind of my journey in getting there. And just really like, I have so much awe and respect for all that our bodies can do. And especially the female body, just after, I mean, being a mom, like giving birth, growing a
Yeah.
baby, breastfeed, like it is so amazing.
Yeah. So, I have so many listeners. I think pretty much 100% of my listeners are women. And these like PMS symptoms or painful periods, whether it's diagnosed endometriosis, PCOS, or not diagnosed, and they're just like searching for answers. A lot of them have been on birth control forever. I was put on birth control when I was eight. Okay, because that's when I got my first period, and my mom like couldn't deal with my mood swings. um, so like
Wow.
this is something that we're all really struggling with, and I know that a lot of my clients, especially when they come to see me, have made the decision to come off birth control. Whether that's your choice or not, that's not what I'm getting to. But the ability for women do have this really intricate cycle, and it's very different from men. Like men are on this 24-hour cycle, women are on a 24-hour hormonal cycle and a 30 like 28 30 days whatever hormonal cycle. We're so ruled by the moon, and getting these things back on track in a really natural way can be really daunting for some people. So I would love to hear your input on how to cycle sync your life and embrace like the natural phases of to feel more feminine and in flow in your day to day. Because truly, like, I mean, I haven't been on birth control since I was like 20. So it's been like over 10 years now. And I still deal with like, I think I'm about to get my period and you can see like I have like forehead acne and it's like not fun, but it's so much better than it used to be.
Totally. And so there's really like two paths we kind of are talking about here, and they feed each
Okay.
other, but they're a little bit separate. So on one side, we have like the cycle informing path is the way that I describe it. And so the term cycle syncing, a lot of people like, I'm pretty sure she like trademarked it, but I actually learned about cycle informing before Alyssa Vitti's books came out. And she's like the queen
Yeah.
of cycle syncing. And I think she's awesome, but my seasons are going to be a little bit different than hers because I learned them from a mentor before anyone ever knew of Alyssa Vitti. And so and I also like to use the term cycle informing because I think a lot of people feel this cycle syncing feels there's like so much pressure. I have to sync everything up with where it's at in my cycle instead
Oof.
of like letting my cycle inform decisions I
Oh.
make, right?
Oh, so good.
Yeah. So we
Yeah.
have like this one cycle informing track that we're talking about. And when we are more informed about what's happening with our hormones and where we're at in our cycle, and we're making and informing decisions based around that, everything starts to feel more in flow and we feel like more in our feminine and everything just kind of clicks a little bit easier in life. And that's amazing. And then we have this other track that's parallel, but sometimes they cross over. I mean, they're always connected, but it's not exactly the same. And that's the hormone balancing track. And like I said, they
Mm.
feed each other. So the more that your balanced hormones are balanced, the easier you're going to find it to cycle inform. And the more you're going to
Mhm.
enjoy each season of its cycle. And
Mhm.
the more you're living in a way that's in alignment with your cycle, the more balanced your hormones are going to be. So they're both really important, but I do think it's important to distinct to make them distinct from each other because a lot of times
Mhm.
people will be like, I'm cycle syncing so hard, but my hormones, like I'm still a crazy person in my luteal phase. And I'm like, yeah, because your hormones are still imbalanced and there's something else going on here, right? So we have to talk about both. But when it comes to cycle informing, so we've got these four seasons, right? And the way that I really like to describe them is seasons. Like just like everything in nature is cyclical, so too are our bodies. And so often people are like, "Oh, I love ovulation. I want to stay in spring." That's my think of it as summer. Like I want to stay in spring forever. It's like that's not how the world works, right? And
Yeah.
so when we really just like lean into these seasons, we start to flow like Mother Earth, and it's really amazing. So we have these four seasons: menstruation, which is the most obvious for people. Most people can tell when they're bleeding out of their body, right? So like
Mm.
that one's okay, I know when that's happening. Then we have our follicular phase, and this is the season for me, I think about it as winter, and it's like when in winter things aren't actually dead. Like if you go out in winter, you see like the little buds on the trees and everything is like waiting, right? And this is almost like the pre-planning and getting ready. And then an ovulation is spring. It's like when the flowers bloom and are ready to be fertilized. This is our fertile time, right? And so like thinking about it as really fertile and what do we do with that and what do we like manifest with that? And that's kind of that manifestation female energy. And they've actually done really neat studies um on strippers and found that strippers who are on hormonal birth control make less money than strippers who are not. And what they figured out is that because of the pheromones that you're putting out during
Stop.
ovulation, when you
No
are
way.
yeah, isn't that wild?
That's
Are so
crazy.
so magnetic and so attractive. And so the strippers who were putting
Wow.
out these pheromones during the month when they were ovulating are so much more magnetic and attracting so much more. So we know this works with the opposite sex, but we also know that this works same sex. Like you're just more magnetic, you're more articulate, you're like on your game. And so really harnessing that energy and knowing when you're ovulating too. I mean, this is the funny thing, everyone tracks their period, but like it's not that there isn't potent energy in your period. There is. That's like the time for looking at your intuition and like getting clear on goals and kind of like ideating, like, what do I want to bring into fruition this month? That is beautiful on your period. But during
Yeah.
ovulation is when you actually make it happen. So most people are
Mm,
missing, because they're not actually tracking when they're ovulating. They're missing that really potent, fertile window of like creation, not just from a creation in your body perspective, which it also is, but like creation in the world. And then we have this luteal phase, which is, I call it summer. It's like kind of your temperature rises if you're tracking your temperature to see if you're when you're ovulating. So you get warm in your luteal phase. So it's easy to remember, like your temperature rises, it's summer. And it's kind of like the summer that grandma came to town. So I like to say that progesterone, which is the hormone that controls the second half of our cycle, the progestation
mhm.
hormone, she's like grandma progesterone. And when she comes to town, she's like, why don't we stay in and make cookies and like don't go out with people I don't know, like don't talk to strangers. And our body is like doing all of this to protect us. It thinks we might be pregnant. There's not like walking
Mm,
talkies between the egg that went out and your ovaries. So there's like a
mm,
window where they're like, oh, are we going to be pregnant or not? And so your body
mhm.
becomes a little bit more discerning. You're a little bit more skeptical and cautious and analytical. And if we learn
Interesting.
how to like harness that and be like, okay, if I have my rose colored glasses on and like, my ovulation late follicular phase, and now I have like a little bit more blue colored glasses, like that might actually be beneficial. So we're not just like living in
Mm,
la la land all the time, right?
mhm.
So anyways, when we really learn to harness these different energies and flow with them, magic can happen in our lives, like true magic. And on the other side of the spectrum, it can be really hard to feel like we're in that good flow if our hormones are not doing what they're supposed to be doing that control those
Right.
cycles, right? And so
Yeah.
that's where like the ingredients in our world, in our that we're putting in our body that are around our body, so our environment, our food, even things like artificial lights, et cetera, are influencing our hormones. And I find that the more we really support our hormones on a body level, we're able to cycle sync better, which supports our more feminine energy and creation in the world. It's like this cycle.
Hi, babes. I am so excited to talk to you about my signature program, The Mindful Method. This is the exact same method that I have been using with hundreds of successful clients to help you heal your relationship to food, to increase confidence, and to lose weight without dieting or killing yourself at the gym. If you're sick of not feeling like your best self, if you're sick of promising yourself that you'll start again on Monday, if you're sick of going on restrictive diets only to gain back the weight, I can tell you right now that if you gained it back, it did not work. You know what's healthy and what's not. You do. You just continue to choose the unhealthy option anyways. And a meal plan will not solve this issue. There is no amount of restriction or discipline or willpower that is going to stop you from self-sabotaging. The body follows the mind. Imagine a life where you don't have to think about what you can or can't eat. Imagine a life where you feel confident in all of your clothes, where every day in every way your body rebalances and you lose all of the weight so you find the truest, healthiest version of yourself. Imagine never having to start again on Monday. This is what happens when you focus on transforming the brain so weight loss is effortless. The body follows the mind, and it's time you actually get to the root cause of your issue. If you are ready to transform and find the truest, healthiest version of you without letting go of your favorite foods, I invite you to fill out the application in my bio. And if you're a good fit, we'll be in touch soon. Back to regular programming.
Wow, I love the way that you describe that because I've had hormone specialists on the podcast like so frequently. We run the Dutch test, like I deal with hormones all the time, but I hadn't really thought about it from the perspective of like really connecting it to that like feminine ability to create, like manifest, like obviously create life and like, oh, where PMS would be, where acne would be, we are going to be able to work out harder versus not work out harder, right? But the way that you described it in, okay, so just so that I'm clear here, like the menstruation phase is where we're obviously releasing. And this is where our intuition comes through. This is where we're like, it's almost like, I don't know if you do like new moon and full moon uh, practices, but in the full moon, like we're like letting go, like we're letting go of the shit. And the new moon, we're like manifesting something new, right? So I would think about this as like the full moon. This is like we're letting go. We're like thinking about what we would want to create for the next cycle. Then the next phase is like, hey, things are starting to bug, but we're still in like waiting phase almost. It's like we're
It's almost like brainstorming phase. Like, so it's
ooh,
actually like a little bit of like the more masculine. So like what happens is estrogen. So estrogen, if grandma progesterone is grandma, then we have our fun aunt estrogen. And she is like wearing cheetah print and like fun heels. And she comes to town and she's like, do you have a fake ID? You want to go dancing? You know, she's like super fun. And so she like we actually, it's interesting. We think about like our being on our like hormonal on our period. Hormone levels are
yeah,
actually lowest when we're
I
bleeding.
know, yeah,
Right.
right.
And so as estrogen is slowly starting to rise, estrogen makes us feel confident, feel social, all of these things. And so she's at her peak at ovulation and we're like, woo! But when she's just slowly starting up, we actually have like a little bit more of the like masculine energy coming in of like
Mm.
focus and brainstorm and like planning. So yeah, that's like what the follicular phase is. It's like that little bit of as estrogen is starting to rise, like a little bit of focus, a little bit of energy, but like nothing crazy yet.
Yeah, wow. I'm like my wheels are turning, even though I'm in my like what did you call it? A grandma progesterone is in town for me, but like my wheels are turning now because I'm like, oh, what if with my new moon and full moon cycles, we actually synced it in this way with the feminine body? Like this is just honestly blew my mind. So thank you so much for going into that. Okay, so now I would love to kind of turn to, so we understand the processes, we understand like the template, but what are some tools for tuning into that innate feminine wisdom and being able to decode what the body's trying to tell you about your health? Because I can tell you right now, like, first of all, especially if you've been on birth control for a while or not, it, you don't even need to have been. We are just so disconnected from what our body's trying to tell us. And half the time, I'm sure you can resonate with this with your stomach aches. You're like, I don't know what this means. I just know I don't feel good all the time. So, how can we start to like use that kind of feminine wisdom and decode what's going on?
Totally. So the first tool is a journal. It sounds really simple, but take a journal and day one of your cycle, all the way day two, day three, day four. And I'll usually recommend that people pick like a few different, like depending on what's going on in their life, right? So, I
Hmm.
mean, maybe for you, it's like, my symptoms feel very physical. Maybe they feel more emotional. Maybe they feel like whatever's going on, you know. And so I'll typically recommend people track like their energy levels and their like libido. Maybe they're tracking, you know, how like irritated or not they get with their partner, how motivated they are, you know, depending on what the things are. And so just like make a few categories in a journal. And day one, kind of take note. Day two, kind of take note. And based on what happens over the course of an entire cycle, most of the time we'll start to see some patterns. And that can give
Yeah.
us a little bit of insight into like, okay, well, if I'm really starting to feel X at this time, maybe it's more connected to my testosterone. I'm having too much testosterone. Maybe if I'm connected at this time, it's my body saying I need more of a different kind of energy from nutrition in my second half of my cycle. Like a lot of times, people who struggle with really bad PMDD or really bad PMS, it's a blood sugar regulation thing. And so if we're kind of tracking like, okay, what am I eating? And then what, you know, are these symptoms I'm having? We're able to see that. And so a journal is a really easy tool. Um, and then another thing, which is a little bit more in like the woo world, but not quite, is really start talking to your body. And I know it sounds kind of silly. And when people, like one of my clients start doing it, they're like, this feels so awkward to begin with. But like when we're really still with ourselves and we
Mm.
treat our body like you would be talking to like a lover or a good friend, and you say, like, hi, I'm here, I'm ready to listen. Okay. Like, I know you've been trying to talk to me. I just want you to know I'm here to listen. Tell me what you need more of. Tell me what you're trying to tell me. And like ask your body that every day. Check in a couple times a day. It's like any relationship. You know, if you were like trying to make a marriage work and you didn't have a good relationship, it would start with open communication, right? And so
Mhm.
really open up the communication lines between you and your body and personify your body. Talk to your body like it's a separate person from you. Obviously, though, you are, you know, one, but really start to open up those lines of communication and you will be shocked at over the course of a few weeks the kind of intuitive downloads you're going to get. And this is where you can start to then sync it up with that cycle syncing, right? So if you've been really talking to your body and asking it to tell you, please come through for me, right? Tell me what you need more of, then maybe on the first day of your bleed, when the right and left side of your brain have more access to communication to each other, because that's what's happening in your body, and you're getting more of those intuitive downloads, maybe you sit with your journal and you do like a stream of consciousness journaling and you just see what comes up. And you would be amazed at like the really potent things that are just channeled through, as far as like, this is what my body is asking more from me of.
Yeah, we are like so far in the woo over here. So like my listeners will totally resonate with that. But I remember I did this talk, it was probably about 2 years ago now, and I like had people do this kind of like meditation where we were just sinking back into the body and like talking to the body and being silly with it too, because when I do it with kids, I'll be like, "What noise would your knee make?" Like, and like they're like, and it's just like it kind of just develops that back and forth relationship. But it's so true. Like our minds are so fast paced. And if we think about the different parts of our minds, like we like the monkey mind, or we can be literally be here present in the moment. We can be thinking about the future. We can be thinking about the past. We can be thinking about ourselves, right? Like from a third party perspective. But our bodies like literally can only be in one place at one time. And so it would be like being in a relationship with somebody where it's long distance. You're not in the same place at the same time, and you never communicate. Like that relationship's not going to function at all. So this, like, to me, like this is actually the most important thing, and I'm so glad that you talked about that, because especially when my clients come to me and they're like, okay, like what do I eat, and I'm like, you tell me, like, what does your body need? Because your body is actually going to be able to guide you from a nutrition perspective, but also like, do you need more sleep? Do you need more fun? Do you need more omegas? Like your body will guide you, but if we're not tapped in, we're never going to hear that. And then the brain's going to go into like, well, this nutritionist said 3 meals a day, 90 grams of protein. And like, I just think that like throws everything off, because we're following somebody else's like meal plan. It's like, it's so not bio individualistic to like who you are.
Totally. And I mean, and you and I kind of had like touched on this on my podcast a little bit too. I also like will hold that with, a lot of times in our modern world, we are so far from what is biologically normal that it can be really
Mm,
hard to get a clear signal from your body. And so I
yeah.
find for a lot of people, like clearing some of the internal noise in terms of like that physical block to like why your body isn't communicating opens up those channels of communications in a really amazing way. So if anyone here is just like really struggling with that, just know that I get that. And it makes a lot of sense. And I mean, the way that I kind of explain it is most of the time by the people come to you or me, right? They've been at war with their
Hmm.
body for a long time.
Yeah.
And one of the ways that I've like kind of personified it is like, if we have this body, right? And our body is always trying to come back into balance for us, and it's always trying to support us and do all of the things it needs us to do. And then we like totally tell it to fuck off for years, right?
Hmm.
And just
Hmm.
like in the way
Hmm.
I kind of explained it, it's like you are in high school, and you're like really stressed about going to college. And so you're like doing all the AP classes and you're doing all these applications. And you're so stressed all the time. And then you go to college and you start partying like it's nobody's business. And you're giving your body drugs, alcohol, and you're not sleeping well. And your body's like, okay, it's only a few years. I can do this. I can show up for her. And then you get your first job and you're like super stressed out all the time, but then you're still also going out all the time and you're still binge drinking and you're doing all these things. And then you meet the guy and you plan a wedding and it's super stressful and you go on and on and on and on. And the body's like, it's only going to be a little longer. It's only going to be a little longer. And then the body's like, okay, this is just your life and I can't do this anymore. Right. We have to rebuild that trust. And so a lot of times it
Yeah.
really comes back to like, there is both sides of like, you have to show your body, hey, I'm going to show up for you, for then your body to be able to be like, okay, I'm going to show up for you back.
Yeah. And then the funny part is after the end of like, okay, then you meet the guy and you're planning the wedding, then you're like, now I want to grow life inside of my body. And the
Mhm.
body's like, no, half the time. Like infertility rates are ridiculously high. And I have so many clients that struggle with infertility, and I'll usually like, I mean, address it, I'm sure fairly similar to you, but it's like, it's not, and I really, my heart goes out to these women, because I did not have any trouble conceiving, even though I was told at a young age I would literally never have children,
Wow.
just because I had so many hormonal issues going on. But like these women walk around thinking they're broken, and I'm like, you're you're in a feminine body, so that's literally what it's designed to do. And so but if you've been disconnected for so long, like it can't do what it's meant to do, right?
Absolutely. I mean, and that's that analogy I made. It totally is because so many of my clients, I mean, I work as a fertility coach, come to me with that. And
Mhm.
it's yes, it's also like that is your body's way of trying to tell you something isn't functioning properly. And unfortunately, like the way that we address it in the conventional system is just missing the mark a lot of the time. Like we can force your body to do a lot of things, right? Um,
Yeah, yeah.
but I think it's all just, I mean, and this is kind of getting into the woo a little bit too, but like we are just like living in such a different way than God designed. And I think
Mhm.
so much of this is like coming back to what is like how we are divinely designed and giving our body those inputs that were also divinely designed.
Mhm. I have a question. I'm not sure if you're gonna have a take on this, but, I read a study a little while ago about, actually, this was really prominent when I was going through divorce with my husband or ex-husband, but, about women who meet somebody when they're on birth control, and then when they come off birth control, they're, like, no longer attracted to that same person, and birth control do you have any, like, any insight on that?
Yeah, I mean, I've read all the same studies and I've seen it happen in real life for sure. The
Yeah.
mechanism it's really interesting. Some of the studies make it seem like like that women who are on birth control are less attracted to like more masculine men. Like,
Mm.
but also it's deeper than that in the sense of like we are really primal creatures and like it impacts our sense of smell. And apparently there's like and I might not get all the details of this right, but when
That's
I
fine.
learned about it originally, it was something like that we're not like smelling each other properly when we're on birth control and like
Mm.
not picking up on
Mhm.
that. And so you're less genetically compatible with this person, meaning that your children might not be as resilient and strong in terms of genetics. Also, like, so it's not just picking the right partner as far as like attraction, but also like picking the right partner that is going to like produce the best offspring. Crazy.
It's so crazy. It's so crazy. And I think the craziest part of all of this is, birth control is like really not that old. Like we don't have like future long-term studies on, I mean, we're getting them now, and it doesn't look good, but it's just
Clearly.
like, yeah. And it's when we look at it from a very black and white perspective, we're like, women are meant to have a cycle. Women are meant to produce children. And when we block that process or inhibit that process, we're literally like not living in our alignment, like from a physical perspective and emotional, spiritual, etc.
There are like almost no studies on birth control published that are more than 6 months. I mean, it is like insane. The amount of like you were on it from 8 to 20, I was on it from 12 to 21. Like it is like the biggest experiment that is happening in real time without actual consent that has happened. I mean, it is
Wow.
I feel like a long time ago, people were like, "You're super anti-birth control," and I was like, "I'm not. I'm not anti-birth control. I'm pro-informed consent." And I don't think most
Hmm.
people who are taking this medication actually understand that it's a carcinogen. Like it is named a
Hmm.
class one carcinogen. Like
Hmm.
most people don't realize that the impact it has to cause irritable bowel disease, especially if you have any family history. Like when you went on birth control at 8, did they ask you about family history of that? I assure you they did not. Like that is my issue with it, is I just think that there are so many women who are so blindly being told that this medication has no side effects and is safe, or no side effects besides like maybe gaining weight or something. Um,
Yeah.
where like just open up the insert on this, on the package. And there was like a reel that went
Hmm.
viral a long time ago where this woman made a dress out of the insert of her birth control. Like that's how
Oh
big,
shit.
like you can make like a tube.
Wow. Wow. Oh shit.
So read
Wow.
your inserts.
Yeah. I have been playing around, like, I mean, my entire practice is very mental health oriented, obviously, but like lately I've been playing around with launching a new program on like specifically mental health and not just addressing like weight loss or overeating. And I heard this quote a while ago and it always stuck with me because I'm somebody that I just told you, like from a very, very young age, had very intense mood swings, like, and I'm talking like deep depression, like deep, like as a young child, right? And every time that I went on birth control, like the depression just got so much worse. And now I'm thinking, I'm like trying to put two and two together. And I tell this to my clients a lot too, that a lot of them, that when they struggle with stubborn weight and they struggle with depression and they've been on birth control for so long, I'm like, well, it's probably because your hormones are so imbalanced. But it really, if we look at it even from a bigger picture, it's like, I believe that like every soul comes into their body and we're like meant to live in alignment. And if we're living in alignment with ourselves, we're always going to feel purposeful. Like we might not always be happy, but our baseline of happiness is going to be much higher. We're going to be psychologically resilient. We're going to be all of the, like life is going to be full of a joie de vivre and this purposeful, fulfilled life. But when we literally stop the signals that like tell our body how to release hormones on this cyclical cycle by itself, how can we be in that alignment, right? Of course, depression, anxiety, et cetera, is going to be a symptom of us not being connected to like who we are and what our body's supposed to do.
Absolutely, 100%, 100%.
Yeah.
And I mean, if anyone is listening to this, like you should watch and thinking about this connection, watch The Business of Birth Control. I mean, it specifically
Mm,
talks about the association with mental health disturbances and how like it's crazy how much anecdotal evidence there is, and they refuse to really look at it from the actual data. And I mean, I see this in my practice all the time, you know, when I'm doing an intake for a client and they're like, okay, you know,
hmm
tell me your health history. And it's like, okay, I went on birth control when I was 14. And at 15, I went on a depression medication, or I went on an SSRI or an anti-anxiety medication. And I see this all the time.
hmm
I'm like, well, did anyone ever tell you that it might be because you were on the birth control? No. And so 10 years later, they've been
Yeah.
taking these two pharmaceuticals that are completely altering their brain chemistry and their body and all of these other things. So yes.
Yeah, actually, because when I had my both my kids were C-sections and I had my daughter at 30 and they were like, my OB was like, do you want me to tie your tubes? In hindsight, I like, I mean, I don't know that I would necessarily want surgery, but I definitely know I don't want any more kids. But when I said no, then the immediate thing was like, all right, let's put her on birth control. And I advocated, listen, like it doesn't work well for my body. I gain weight. I feel depressed. And like they were just like, that's not possible. Like that was the response. And I'm like, are you serious? At this point, I'm already like a practicing nutritionist. Like I haven't, you know, and so it's so, and this isn't to knock like Western medicine. Thank God for my OBGYN. Like she literally saved my baby's life. So like I'm so grateful for that. But it's just it's so shitty that we have to self-advocate for ourselves in such a big way because there's just so much misinformation out there. So, one more question on birth control, and then we'll move on to some other like more like leadership things. But so I think cycle. That's my form of birth control. It's worked very well for me. I've never had a whoopsie. Do you have any like favorite like what are your forms of birth control that you would recommend? Obviously not taking the pill. And what do you use?
Yeah. So fertility awareness method is what I recommend for most clients. And the thing that I love about fertility awareness method is it's like a light switch. You turn it on when you want to get pregnant and you turn it off when you don't, right? In terms of like you're doing the same thing, you're just tracking for a different reason. So that's always
Mm,
exciting. And so if anyone doesn't know what fertility awareness method is, it's a combination of a few different factors. So the first one that we use is tracking your temperature. So
yeah.
like I mentioned, when you ovulate, your temperature rises. And so your temperature will go up and that gives you a sign, okay, I'm no longer fertile this month and we can have unprotected sex if we want to. So BBT is like the number one way. And then that we start with, and then we look at cervical position and cervical fluid. So tracking your cervical fluid, cervical fluid. So like the discharge in your undies is going to change throughout your cycle. So sometimes if you've ever had that like slip and slide feeling when you wipe, you're like, woo, okay. Like that's like the really fertile cervical mucus, which is like egg whites. You can kind of like move it between your fingers. It stretches, it's clear. And then it'll be like a little bit more tacky at the end of your cycle, things like that. And so we can really start to pay attention to our body's signals. I hate when people are like really relying on apps because apps are just basically doing an algorithm, right? Like
Me. Yeah.
your body is not an
Yeah.
algorithm. And so what we want to do is
So
really
true.
track your body's clues. And so cervical mucus is one of my favorites that we bring in with BBT, temperature tracking. And then the last one is cervical position. So your cervix, which is, you know, the little that gets this big when you go to have a baby, you know, but right now, you know, is typically like a little button. And if you want to actually touch your lip right now, if you're listening this, just like casually touch your lip and you feel how soft and like pliable it is. So that is like an open, soft cervix. And when you were ovulating, your cervix will come further up in your vagina. It'll be further up to create more space for if you were to, again, we're super primal, everything is based around reproduction. So it'll create more space for, a penis to enter you. And so it'll be higher up in the vagina. So it's further away, okay, and it'll be soft and open like your lip. It'll feel like your lip.
Mm.
Now, during the other 2 times of your cycle, during your follicular phase and your luteal phase, it'll come lower down, like halfway down, and it'll be hard. So touch like the surface of your desk or your phone or something. It'll feel more hard to touch, more.
Whoa.
And then when you're,
Whoa.
most people don't check their cervical position when they're bleeding because they already know that they're bleeding. But if you were to, it's actually the closest to the entrance of the vagina that it will ever be. So it's not actually that far up. And it's soft and open again to allow for the blood to come out, just like it's open and soft to allow for semen and sperm to go in. So again, super cool and primal. So the way that people typically check is like, you right before you shower every day, or, in the morning when you go to pee or something. And I usually say like, one leg up on the bathtub, or you can squat on the floor or whatever, and just check where your cervix is. And so the combination of these factors gives us really, really accurate and clear cycle tracking and fertility tracking, where we can then say, fertile window, not fertile window, use condoms or diaphragms or whatever, or not, or avoid sex, etc. So historically, that's what I've done for birth control. I am still exclusively breastfeeding my son. We practice what's called ecological breastfeeding and natural mothering, which, when practiced properly, provides on average 13 months of lactational amenorrhea, which is basically like not having fertility. But for some women, it goes for longer. And so sometimes up to 3 years. And so I'm like 22 months out and I'm still not ovulating, breastfeeding my son. And so that's what I'm doing for birth control right now personally, but historically, fertility awareness method.
But definitely consult a practitioner. I would just like, because I've had a couple of clients even that couldn't get pregnant. We regulated their hormones, they had a baby, and then like they're breastfeeding and they get pregnant immediately right after. So caution, like if that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, totally. And I mean, I was super curious about this because breastfeeding used to be birth control and now it's not. And so I was like really, really curious about this. And I actually spent months doing research. And the best thing I ever found was Sheila Kipley has a book called, oh my God, what's the name of her book? It's called Natural Child Spacing and Breastfeeding. And basically it's called ecological breastfeeding, and it is not what most people are doing today. And that's a really important distinction. So there are 7 factors. Ecological breastfeeding, no bottles, no pacifiers. So this is not like you pump and then your husband gives the baby a bottle once a week. That's a beautiful practice that they choose to do, but it will not provide the same protection as far as birth control. You also need to co-sleep with your kid and nurse them throughout the night. And you have to do at least 1 nurse nap a day. It's basically like what having a baby used to look like 100 years ago, which is why it used to be birth control and now it's not. Now we have all of these replacements, like a pacifier, et cetera. Like baby should comfort and suckle at the breast for comfort. That's like one of the key factors. And so, yes, like talk to a practitioner, but I think it is just a really important distinction, because a lot of people are like, but I was breastfeeding and I got pregnant. I'm like, okay, but were you actually ecologically breastfeeding? Almost probably, certainly not for most people. When they're pregnant.
Yeah. Wow. I'm so glad that you clarified that for me. I had no idea, and how cool that you like did that research, and because I never even would have thought about that. But like that makes perfect sense. Like of course,
Yeah. It's basically like the primary mechanism, there's a few, but the primary mechanism that holds your fertility back is the amount of time that baby is at the breast.
Oh,
And each
wow.
woman will have her own like threshold. So like my threshold is pretty high, but also my son still nurses on demand. He nurses all night long. I see him several times a day. One of the ecological breastfeeding pillars is like no babysitters, or like anything that would like really separate you from your son for long periods of time. I mean, nowadays, this book was written in the 60s. Nowadays, I can work from home and be on this call with you, and I can see him before and after. So he's with a babysitter, throughout the day, but like I'm multiple times a day and he's nursing multiple times a day. So it's really like that suckle reflex. And so a lot of people, who use pacifiers to pacify their children instead of leaving them at the breast, that makes their threshold then not be met. And yeah.
Wow, this was really fascinating. Thank you so much, Stephanie. I totally wanted to get into business building, so I might have to have a part two to this, but I want to get you back to your son also so that you can ecologically breastfeed. But I just wanted to say thank you so much for just being such a wealth of knowledge. I know there are so many women who really need guidance in this way. And it looks like even just, probably even before you had children, your infatuation with the female body and how it works drove you here. But what's really, really cool and personally what I love about like really passion driven practitioners is when you get hit when you're experiencing something, you want to look deeper and then you do the research. And so I think that's really beautiful. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Oh, before I go, is there anything you want to share with my audience?
Yeah. Just trust that you are the expert of your own body. I think today, and we talked a lot about like the medical system, and even when it comes to like this baby piece we were just talking about in the very last few minutes, like we outsource so much of our decision making. Oh, sorry about that. We outsource so much of our power to external quote unquote authority. And like when it comes to
Mhm.
having a baby or getting pregnant or just like healing your body, whatever it is, trust that own intuition and know that you are the expert of your own body, not me, not Jordana, like no one really other than you.
Right.
Can be witnesses and guides to help point you in the right direction and access that intuition. But when you start really owning that sovereignty, you will see your health transform, your family life transform, all of the things in a way that you never imagined possible.
So beautifully said. We will link up all of Stephanie's, you're on Instagram, I believe. Yeah. Instagram, website, all of your programs in the show notes. But again, I just wanted to thank you so much for being here. If you guys liked this episode, don't forget to like and subscribe and share it with another woman who might need it. And I'll see you back on another episode of the Mindful Method podcast. Bye.